David, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Paul. It's really a pleasure to see you. It's been too long.
Yeah, likewise, man. I mean, I always it's funny when I'd see you in California, it would usually be you just giving me a hug from behind, like just appearing out of nowhere.
Yeah,
Because we'd seldom, it wouldn't be like a calendar thing, would it? Where it'd be like, I'll meet you at 10 a.m. on, you know.
that's almost impossible for people who don't know that we're talking about the National Association of Music Merchants Convention, the NAMM Show.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
almost impossible to schedule things.
yeah.
I can tell you a funny story right off the bat about that. Are you familiar with? There's a young guitarist who's pretty much taken the music world by storm named Corey Wong. Have you heard of Corey Wong?
Oh, no, 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 no. Tell me.
Okay, yeah, he's quite popular in like the same circles as people like Snarky Puppy and
Okay, okay.
bands like that. And but he's from here in Minnesota, and he was a student at the college that I taught at, and his drummer is was a student of mine at the college. But like part of his band, but like his horn players work with Prince, and so they're doing great things all around the world. So
Yeah,
Corey's this brilliant young guitarist, and he became a star. And so this is about just trying to meet people at NAMM. So the last time I was out at NAMM, which I think was 2 years ago, Corey had an appearance scheduled at the Diodario booth, the strings,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And that was supposed to be at noon. And my oldest son Lewis, who's a brilliant guitarist himself, he's like, "You want to go? You want to meet Corey?" And Lewis hadn't met Corey, and he wanted to meet him. And I said, "Well, I'll introduce you to him." I said, "Let's go to the Diodario signing." So it's like noon. He's supposed to be there. He's not there. 12:15, 12:30, 12:45. Finally, just before 1 o'clock, he comes rushing in, and there's a whole line of people been waiting to see him, and all this kind of stuff like that. And it was just funny because, he's got all these adoring fans, but I knew him as a student, and so they've got posters and things, and he's going to autograph, and they finally rush him in, and he sits down, and we're waiting first in line because we got there early. And he
Yeah.
looks up and he recognizes me, and I said, "You're late." And we got a good laugh out of it. But that's the thing. You could say, "Okay, I'll meet you at this time at here," but it rarely works that way.
Yeah, I mean, I know exactly what you mean. I know a guy who used to get frustrated by that,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, you can't be because obviously it's the other side of the world for us,
Yes.
and opportunity knocks, and sometimes you have to knock on opportunity, right? Like you have to, you know, and if opportunities knocks for the person that you're meeting, you'll find them.
Yeah.
You'll for as big as the show is geographically, the footprint isn't that big, is it? You're gonna meet them.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
They're gonna find you. Yeah. No, it's I find the traffic pattern inside the convention center for the NAMM show is not much different than the traffic pattern outside the convention center on the freeway.
Yeah, yeah.
You're going to get there when you get there.
Yeah, yeah, and then you make the most of it when you're there, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's why people go. And it's that's what it is. It's. I mean, I understand the commercial applications, which are really a little beyond me. I mean, I work with the companies whose products I endorse, and I sometimes, I've had clinics there and things like that, but oftentimes I'm just going to just have the opportunity to greet them and say hello and maybe talk to them about, things I'm interested in, and all that. But that's the bottom line is for somebody like me is it's just an opportunity to be in the community,
Yeah,
see you and see everybody
yeah,
else and have a chance to say hi in real time because so often nowadays, what we have going on right here is incredibly convenient and it's fascinating and it's a beautiful thing. But it's, I mean, like, it's great because I'm in Minnesota and you're over in England but I mean, when we could be in the same space at the same time,
yeah,
that's the best for me.
yeah. I agree. I mean, for someone of my years, this is new stuff relatively, right? So I met you at the NAMM show and would only be able to catch up with you annually at that point.
Yeah.
and now, during lockdown, you helped me with my jazz book, with that project, and that wouldn't have been possible, would it?
No, because it would be hard to find the time.
Yeah.
That was the thing about the pandemic, I think, along the realms of education and writing books and things like that. Obviously that was a very productive period for you, and you did great work. But it just reminded me that, like, I think the one who maybe had the biggest reach doing that same kind of thing at that same period of time was Steve Gadd with his Gaddaments book, because they worked on that during the lockdown. And I think I saw an interview with Steve where he said his motivation was that he didn't want to stop playing, because he figured, trying to get back into shape if you just play for a while. And so he fell into working with all those things and coming up with new ways to keep himself stimulated, and a lot of people have benefited from that,
Yeah, and that's when I that period was when I was able to really sit down and work through your book.
Oh, cool! Wow.
Yeah. Now, I don't mean to say to any proficient level necessarily, but but what I mean is to actually understand the journey of what the book is actually trying to get the reader to take, right?
Yeah. And so okay, so now for people who might not know, we're talking about a book I've written called Mastering the Tables of Time, which is a study. It's a method that I worked out, having been inspired primarily by an article I read with an interview I read with Tony Williams not long before he passed, when he was promoting what was the final record he had recorded before he passed, called Wilderness. And of course, Tony died quite unexpectedly after a gallbladder surgery. That wasn't supposed to happen. But he was talking about how when he first started recording himself, things that he thought were clear to himself were not coming back to him clearly. In time and feel and sound, and he started to pay more attention to the value of being very clear in expressing himself rhythmically through subdivisions in his timekeeping, and then practicing things along those lines, which reminded me of some things I had seen in my studies. There were some things, timetables, we'll call them, right, by Joe Morello. That I had seen in Modern Drummer growing up, and a couple of those were, I think, there were a couple roll studies and a paradiddle study, and they went through the subdivision. That's what's going on. You're working out how to take these ideas and rearrange them rhythmically, which has some really marvelous musical effects, and really helps you develop a lot of things at once, I think, as a drummer, because what I came to understand was it's everybody's responsibility, whoever you're playing with, bandstand, recording studio, playing live, whatever, to have a good sense of time. And because that's one of the key ingredients into getting a good feel, right? And so all of the things that we work on in drumming, and I'm particularly relating to the tradition that comes through the drum set from snare drumming and all the things like that. We work on rudiments. We work on coordination. We work on phrasing in taking ideas. They could be rudimental, they could be linear, and creating solo motives out of these things. And then, of course, there's beats. There's timekeeping and the approaches to playing grooves in pop music and jazz music and all this kind of stuff like that. And we work on all these different kinds of things, polyrhythms, you know.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that, like, even though it's everybody's job to keep time, the minute it starts to slip, they're looking at us.
Yeah.
You know, they're looking at us. We're the ones who are going to get the blame, right?
Right.
So in order to be not perfect, you know, I can turn on the metronome on my phone and that'll be perfect. But in order to have what I remember, I think Peter Erskine wrote a great book called Time Awareness for musicians. Time awareness, to have a stronger inner clock, greater time awareness. You know, it's like I realized, being inspired by Tony, that the table of time idea was a great way to practice all these different things that we work on, because it's like putting it through the filter of the condition that matters the most when we play, you know. And I think that's one reason that the book became popular and has sustained in popularity, is because people who experience it, most people, I don't know about everybody, most people immediately find that they're faced with the challenge of it immediately. And then that illuminates the value, in my opinion. I mean, that's just based on, well, certainly feedback I've gotten from other people, but what it did for me when I just started working on some of those ideas, which became instantly fascinating to me, you know. And it seemed like everything that I threw at it would stick, you know. So having run my mouth about that for quite a bit of time, you were saying you spent more time working through the book during the pandemic. So I'd be very curious to hear some of your impressions of what it might have done for you.
Well, so you gave me a signed copy of it before the pandemic, but then it was already the poll winners, the Modern Drummer poll winners, like winner. You know, it won the award.
Yeah.
And it's on Alfred. Is that right, Alfred?
Yes. 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 Initially, I took out a home equity loan and self-published it.
Right.
And then try to make a long story short, which I'm not very good at. Once I had it out, some really interesting people started to really kind of help me behind the scenes. Bernard Purdy was one, and these were well-known people, obviously. Louis Belson, Wilfredo Reyes Sr., Elliot Fine, of course. Somebody got a copy of it to Vic Firth, and then I heard from Dom Famularo, and the next thing I knew, I was on the Vic Firth roster, which suited me just fine because that was kind of my preferred, you know, choice of stick. Absolutely, not kind of, absolutely. And then a fellow named Mark Wessels, who ran Vic's his website, and they were, and you know, Vic, God bless him, you know, it was so dedicated to education, and his website reflected that, you know, I think in even greater detail than his product line. You know, I mean, all the product line was there represented, but the amount of educational material that was available on the Vic Firth website in those days was enormous. It was fascinating. Yeah. And you know, I mean, and this is before Instagram and things like that, where, you know, everything is just coming at you from every direction now. So it was a wonderful resource. And I, self-publishing the book, I intended to have either a video or a DVD video or a CD so you could hear and see the examples, right? Like, which is common, you know, but I couldn't afford it. I at the price point that the book was going to cost to print per copy, and what I wanted to charge for it, which was going to be a little lower than the average book for its price, because, you know, I didn't consider myself to be somebody who had the kind of name that could, you know, instantly people would be like, oh, we got to go get that, you know, and so I just wanted to make it more affordable. And so I ended up creating what was called the free online audio video companion to the book, which still exists, and it was a way to break down each chapter and have a few video and audio examples that basically opened the door to the studies in each chapter without giving everything away.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And I had all that in place when I self-published it. And so Mark asked if they could edit the audio video companion into a series that they ran weekly for maybe a couple months on their website. And that's what triggered the interest in it that helped it to win the Modern Drummer Readers Poll in 2009. And then that led me to my distribution agreement with Alfred Music Publishing, because they came to me. John O'Reilly Jr. was in charge of the drum division at that time, along with Rich Lukowski and, of course, Dave Black, who was the overseer, and the great Dave Black, and and they were interested. I also heard from a couple other publishers, and so the winning the Readers Poll was a game changer, like for people like to talk about. But it was really Vic and his team that gave me the exposure as a self-published person. And then when that book won the poll, and these people started coming to me, I think they were curious because their company's books win those polls, not some it's not some nobody from Flyoverland who and but anyway, so I mentioned Peter Erskine earlier, and I want to mention him again because once I fell into that situation, I wasn't quite sure what to do. But Peter I've known since I was very young, and he's always been very good at, I've never actually sat down and had a drum lesson with Peter, even though I've watched him perform maybe close to 100 times in my life. I've seen him play very, very often over the years, and I've always just been a huge fan. And he would, I could talk to him about things. I could call him up with questions, and he would tolerate me and help me quite a great deal. So I called him up because I knew he had worked with all the different publishers, and he was currently with Alfred at the time, and he said, look, because I was trying to figure out what to do with these offers I was getting. And Peter was very kind. He said, you've proven that you don't need them, so now let's think about what they can do for you, which in those days, not so much anymore because it's just not the thing anymore. But in those days, print advertising was, something that they could do for me that I certainly couldn't afford myself, to run. You must have some idea what it would be like to run even just a little ad in a major magazine in those days. It was it was expensive. Yeah. And so Alfred, of course, was willing to do that, and he also said, so given the fact that you've done this, they're in the business of creating educational projects and marketing and selling them, so they'll need to do more books, and they'll probably want you to do that with him as well, which, it indeed came true. And currently the book is in print with Alfred, as it has been since 2009. And then it's also available digitally through Hudson Music, which is really great. And that's something that Dave DeCencio and, who's an amazing drummer, God, and Rob Wallace put together for me. And that, both still do quite well, and it remains popular, and I do my best to help continue to market it, but I'm always a little slow with that, I'm sure we could talk about that more later, but I appreciate that it's out there helping people.
I mean, for me.
Oh, hey, my ride's here. I gotta go.
Oh, is that you? You're way out of time.
I live near the police and fire station in the neighborhood, so
okay.
That's kind of an ongoing thing here. Sounds like the inner city when it goes by, but I'm out in the suburbs, and
Right.
so anyway. Yeah, but you were saying, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, for me, I went through like a stale, kind of stagnant period where I'd been around a lot of influential people, and I'd absorbed as much as I could. But at the same time, sometimes I couldn't see the wood for the trees, because it's just it's a world of ideas, isn't it? And it's a world of ideas from very creative people.
Yes.
So some resonate more than others, or you need more time to invest in, because you might, in fact you will, not might, you will be able to look at some people's work and say, I know what they're about, I know what they're achieving, and I get it. It's almost like being able to read the last page of the book.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. So, but with your work, because of it is a method, and it's somewhat formulaic, isn't it? In the way that you travel through the book.
Yeah,
but the journey you have to take
anywhere.
it.
But yes,
Yeah.
you have to, and from being an author, you have to figure out how to lay that out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, because the beginning of the book really wasn't exactly where I started, but I realized, well, if I'm going to present this to people in a comprehensive kind of way, you have to unpack it in a way that maybe once you get the basic idea, then you can really go anywhere you want, but you still have to, it's just like if you're writing a novel, you talked about, reading the last page of the book. I mean, you're not start there, right?
No, but you have your characters and your plot. Do you know what I mean? And there it is. What it did for me was it revealed quite quickly that I couldn't hide, and I liked that.
Yeah.
That this was something I could put on the music stand, or I could put it on the floor tom, right?
Right.
And it was a worker horse, like you could work with this and go with it, and it was okay to stay on page whatever for as long as it took. That's fine.
Yeah.
I
think that's the true value of it, is because it's a great equalizer. When you're trying to work in the format of which is not a completely natural thing, is to try to dial into this completely even, steady kind of a pulse, and it's interesting. It's like not let your emotions affect you in a way where if you're going to get excited, you're going to speed up, and if you want to relax a little, slow down, which is natural. But to learn how to anticipate that, and to learn how to harness that, and that's the thing. That's the thing about, I think you hit the nail on the head, because that's the thing that fascinated me, is there was nowhere to hide. Yeah. It's like, wow, I'm not as good at this as I thought I was, is what happens,
Yeah. No, it's exactly that, because it's like holding the mirror up to yourself, isn't it?
Yeah. It shows you right where you're at,
Exactly that, right? And then, of course, with the advent of everybody putting stuff on Instagram or whatever platform it is, which is really useful, you then quickly realize as well that you can't hide in that environment either. So everybody's base level comes up.
Yeah. We're well past the, with all the performing that I do, it's still a thing where every time I open my phone, and I don't know if it's YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, somebody has filmed something at a show I've done that, I have no control over, right? But I'm out there playing, and I'm always just holding my breath for the first couple seconds saying, God, I hope I don't suck while I'm watching this thing, but I have to say this too, more often than not, I'm relieved and quite pleased with what I hear in general. And I take a lot of comfort in the confidence I gained by literally going through those studies in the book, because it helps you rearrange your perspective on playing and apply your emotions to it from the inside out. And it gives you greater strength to control time, just the same way you want to control your coordination and organize your thoughts and stuff like that. And again, is it always perfect? No, but it's not really supposed to be either. I mean, I can do, we can put a click on and run things and I'll be fine. I have no problem with it. It's harder sometimes to do that with other musicians. You know what I mean? Because like Jeff Porcaro used to say, he said, "Oh yeah, everybody's got great time till you turn on the click." And I don't know if you've experienced this yourself, but like I've been in largely recording session situations where the click comes on and it's being fed to everybody, and then you start to find out like who's comfortable playing with the click and who's not. And that can be a really hard thing sometimes, because when people come up against their own shortcomings in a situation like that and in front of other people, they get nervous, they get insecure. It becomes, the thought process becomes just trying to stay with the click as opposed to relaxing and being able to play music, and then that makes it hard for everybody else to just, agree about where everything should be and how it should feel. So, but I'm always glad it's not me. In that situation, and that I'm confident and that I'm comfortable. And that doesn't mean I'd never make a mistake. We're human beings, but it's like, the odds of me getting through things clearly, comfortably, and with a good feel are greatly improved, in my opinion, by what I gained by that study, which is why I realized when there really wasn't a complete comprehensive method of its type focusing on that kind of study, it seemed important to create one and offer one,
So was the method, the book, was it to answer questions that you got yourself, or that you were finding that was a common theme with your students? What was the book?
I think both. Yeah, I think both. But initially it was purely a journey of self. It was because it was, and this is even before the idea of a book entered my mind, right? It was more about, honestly, just being so. When I read this interview with Tony, which I talk about in the introduction of the book, and I think quote from, it just flipped a switch in my head. I'm like, because, being such an admirer of Tony Williams' vast musicianship, not just his drumming, but his drumming, of course, but his ears, his ability to listen, his work as a composer, all of the things that he could do. And so to hear him explain something so clearly that made so much sense to me, it's like, I just immediately was like, I got to check that out. And I, like I said, I mentioned there was the Morello things. I looked up those in my old modern drummer collection. And I knew that there was, I had studied with Alan Dawson for a period of time when I was in college. And Alan had some things that addressed that in his rudimental ritual. And of course, Alan was one of Tony's teachers. So you can see a connection right there. And then Elliot Fine and Marv Dahlgren in some of their books, particularly, the one they're most famous for is four-way coordination. But they also had a couple of amazing books called Accent on Accents, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And I think it was Volume 2 of Accent on Accents had some similar kinds of exercises where you were running an idea from, an eighth note triplet subdivision through an eighth note triplet subdivision through a 16th note subdivision, that kind of a thing. Just fragments. But I went back and checked all those out, and then immediately was inspired to just well, what happens if I do this? And what happens if I do that? And in fact, the idea of writing a book first was planted as a seed in my head by a great drummer who was the drum department head at the college I taught at for almost 28 years, which was originally called Music Tech of Minneapolis and then later became known as McNally Smith College of Music. And that drummer was Gordy Knudsen, who, among many other accomplishments, is probably best known for, he was the drummer in the Steve Miller Band for about 30 years.
Okay.
But he's worked with an incredible list of people and is a great contributor to, percussive education with his open-close technique approach to, hand technique. And he has these products, drum phones, ultraphones that a lot of professionals use that are isolation headphones for recording. And so Gordy's an idea guy. And he heard me practicing things that were just offshoots of my imagination. What happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? Yeah. And and he said, "What are you doing?" And I had handwritten things, and I showed him, and he says to me, he says, he was impressed. He said, "Are you writing a book?" And I said, "No, I'm just practicing. It's improving my playing in leaps and bounds, like by the minute." And Gordy's the kind of guy, if you know him, he listens to that, and then he looks at me and says, "Are you writing a book?" And I'm like, okay, I see, So then it became, well, and then, like I said, I looked for it. I'm like, well, because it's interesting. I wonder if you have this experience as being the published author of different drum books that you are, Paul, is that once you've done something like that, people seek you out for advice about doing the same thing. And the first thing that I always tell them is, look around and make sure that the book that you want to write hasn't already been written. Yeah. It doesn't that you can't offer a fresh perspective on it, but even that will be clearer to you if you see what's already available. Yeah. And so I looked around and I couldn't find anything like it. And so then I thought, yeah, maybe I better do that. And then I spent 10 years on that before it came out.
Yeah, that certainly was the approach with my work, particularly with the book that you helped me on, the jazz book, was that everything I was looking at came with a degree of assumed knowledge. So my idea was, well, let's strip it right back. So drum set for beginners jazz. It's not about being a beginner player. It's about your first steps into what we call jazz, that massive, right? So with the work that you help with, even down to the gallop rhythm and the complex history around the art form, I figured that my work would if it were to have legs, it would be to start at the beginning, and then because, well, no, thank you, I'm grateful, but it was through collaboration, through reaching out to people, because you need, like listening to you with your story, people saying you should do this, and you need it because. I think people need it today, actually. This is just a humble opinion, is because it's very easy to self-publish anything. Okay, now that's not to detract from that, because there'll be a lot of wonderful stuff there. But there can be a lot of duplication of idea, of thought,
Well, the tools are available now for like the whole DIY phenomenon is, it goes in many different directions. If you want to make music, if you want to sell music, you don't necessarily need you don't need a major label to do that anymore. You've got free online distribution for, well, it's not necessarily always free, but there are portals, there are forums, there's all the places like Spotify and Apple and DistroKid and stuff you can upload. and you can self-publish, and you can have books printed on demand through Amazon, and all of this kind of stuff, but at the same time, there's an advantage to that. I understand what you mean about, okay, now anybody, like, on one hand, it's like, okay, now anybody can write a book. So that doesn't mean that what you're going to get is necessarily going to be, it could be questionable about, accuracy or whatever when it comes to certain things. But at the same time, it was Elliot Fine that strongly encouraged me to self-publish my book, because he believed in the idea so much, and he had so much experience with publishers. You get a book, if you have a book with a major publisher, that is sort of a there's sort of this aura of this, like, this sort of badge of authenticity, for lack of a better term. Like, you're legitimate in a literal sense, right?
Yeah.
But Elliot was adamant about, like, don't go for a publishing deal. Publish it yourself and then get a distribution deal, because he predicted everything. He said it'll win the Modern Drummer Readers Poll, and it'll do this and all this kind of stuff like that. I mean, he predicted that, and at the time, I just thought he was being nice, but he told me what was going to happen before it happened. But the thing he wanted to protect me from, Paul, was, he said, if you present this idea to a publisher, he said, I can almost guarantee you they'll turn you down, and then they'll steal it.
Mm.
And they'll get their people to put out their version of it behind your back.
Yeah.
He's like, that happens all the time. And he says, and this is too good, and you've worked too hard, and he said, and plus then you'll only get 10%, even if they say yes, and a distribution deal is actually far more valuable, because you get the lion's share of the percentage, because you've already done the work that they don't have to do, like the publishing and the engraving and the this and the that, so anyway, just to get back to the self-publishing thing, it's like, there's a couple different ways to look at that, right?
Yeah, and I'm not advocating that one's right necessarily. I'm just
I
saying
understand that.
You know what I'm saying.
Off that, because it just popped into my head that's something that people should know. You could take your idea to a major publisher, and you could get rejected and find out that somebody turned around and ripped you off.
Yeah. Vic first said to me once, like, I was talking to him. You'll remember it. They used to have meeting rooms above their booth at the NAMM Show. Do you remember? And you'd go upstairs. And he was talking to me about my ideas, and he said to me, "Have you got them all protected?" And I said to him, "Yeah," but he knew in the way that I'd said it, I was only somewhat confident in my response.
Uh-huh.
And he said, and he put his arm around me, and he said, "Look," he says, "here's the thing." He says, "Don't trust me." He says you can, but don't, because he says everybody here is going to smile at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I know I do, because I had talks like that with Vic too, and it's just I'm getting tingles. Just the way you said what he said, and the thing about putting his arm around you and stuff like that. I had those kind of experiences with him too. He was, and what a beautiful thing to say. You can trust me, but don't. Because it's like, those old R&B tunes, smiling faces sometimes tell lies. And the Backstabbers, all those old tunes, man. It's like, Jeff Hamilton said once, "We're not all friends out here."
Yeah.
And it might look like it, but to protect yourself is a very important thing. And God bless Vic, man. I mean, because he was real, and he was so. I mean, just that act of giving is so reflective of that side of his character, because I mean, he was a bunch of things. I can remember his dirty jokes, and I can remember laughing with him, and I can remember the side of and I would hate to have a guy like that upset with me. You know, like,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because he's a businessman,
Yeah.
and you know, I mean, he could stare down the conductor of the Boston Symphony Orchestra if he didn't like the way he was being treated. You know, I mean, that takes a lot
Yeah.
of balls, right? You know. So he was. I miss him, man, and
Yeah.
the industry. I mean, you can tell him and Remo Belli, people like that, man. They're,
Yeah.
you know, they were cut from a different kind of cloth, but it was the truth that he told you in that moment. You know, I'm sure had to be very empowering because it shapes you, right?
I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, so my introduction to that industry, I mean, I've spoken about this before, but I think it was at the end of the heyday. Now that could be romantic view on
I
life,
think you're right.
You
I
know,
think you're right.
you know, because you'd got Chapin, you'd got Dom, you've got Louis, you know, like the conversations I used to have with Bob Zildjian, you know.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
you know, but these were
He's a
people.
nice man. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I used to think to myself, because you know, I've spoken about like my feelings on my own imposter syndrome. You know, I'm from a small part of a reasonable sized city in England, you know, and then I'm in LA, and I'm meeting Gad and Vinny and Weckl, and you know, and you know, it's kind of overwhelming.
Sure. Yeah. I get
You
it.
know,
Yeah. I
because
moved to
you
Los
know,
Angeles. That's a humbling experience. You know, it
yeah,
was like, I don't live there now, but I did. I went there to go do that. And all of a sudden
yeah,
you're like, you know,
Yeah, and then you've got that sense of wanting to belong to that club, whatever that club is or whatever it means. And I don't you know, at almost 52, that like the club means something completely different than what it did 20 years ago. You know, we've all tried to get into that club, but
yeah, yeah.
when I would have chats with Vic, Rick Drum,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, you know, Bob Zildjian, people like that, I had a sense that they were real people, interested in. Obviously, they were businessmen. Let's not, you know, take that as a given. They were interested, I think, in education, the value of education in of itself, but also for their business.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Without
you know,
question. And, you know, I can only affirm that because, you know, NAMM is everything that goes on at NAMM also goes on at PASIC. But PASIC
right.
and the PAS, which I became, you know, welcomed into first and then involved in for a period of time. I mean, I'm still involved with them to an extent, but not as much as I was. Only because I need to be doing other things. You know,
Yeah,
the Percussive Art Society was created by those people
yeah,
as a way to grow their industry by providing a community event and society, you know, where new ideas are encouraged, education is encouraged, interface is encouraged, the opportunity to come and you know, at PASIC they have what they call an expo, an exposition center, which is set up just like NAMM, where the companies are called vendors and they have their booths, right? And you can sample their wares and stuff like that. And so I mean, anybody from an aspiring young drum set player to a professional player to a timpanist to a college professor who runs an orchestra or a percussion ensemble, they can you know, they have hands-on ability to, you know, to see and hear the instruments, play them, talk to the people that manufacture them,
yeah,
create opportunities to you know, collect instruments for themselves if they want to, for what the purposes are, and the industry, the people like Vic and Remo and everybody else, the Peisty family, the Zildjian family, all these people, they can draw people in with the people that they have like on their rosters that attract attention, but then they bring new people in and they need new ideas and they want to work with new people. So it's a cycle.
Yeah.
It's a cycle. So it doesn't matter if you're from a small town in England, it's like, but I get it totally what you're saying. But like, if you've got a good idea, they want to meet you. They want to know about it because it can't, this is like the advice Erskine gave me about, the idea that Alfred would probably want to collaborate with me on things in the future because of what I've already accomplished at that point. They can't stand still. They need to keep moving forward. Yeah. And in order to do that, they need new people, they need new blood, they need new ideas. And so I would say to anybody, and I'm sure you would back me up on this, if you're somebody who has an idea, follow through on it. And of course, and that's something that we do see a lot on social media. We see a lot of recycling and we see a lot of goofy stuff, but we also see a lot of people putting things out there that are fresh and creative and clever and good.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take it back to young David Stanoch then. Like, how did you end up studying music, and why did you choose the drums over anything else? What was the inspiration? What got you started there?
Well, okay. So the musical inspiration at first came from, and it's funny because I'm sitting in the house I grew up in right now, which I procured a few years back. And there's a lot of memories here. And because a lot of that all happened here. The first thing was my older brother and I, my brother John, just were interested in music and in those times listening to the things that were on the radio. And we had a little suitcase record player and we would buy 45s. It's funny, I was quoting those OJ's tunes and the Backstabbers and stuff a minute ago, and I had all those 45s when I was a kid. I loved R&B, and my parents weren't musicians themselves, but they had a record player and different music, and they liked some New Orleans jazz, and they liked some country and western, and they liked the sort of from their era the people that were popular like Sinatra and things like that. And so that stuff was around. And then I think around the time that I was 7 and my older brother was about 10, my parents asked us about, taking music lessons, or maybe it was just based on the idea that my brother wanted to take guitar lessons. But so I think he was getting set up to take guitar lessons, and they looked at me and they said, "Do you want to take guitar lessons too?" And I think at that point in time, I just kind of wanted to be like my older brother. So I was like, yeah, sure. So what happened is we started taking guitar lessons, and everything clicks for him right away. And he's playing guitar, and he's playing bass, and he's playing clarinet, and he's playing alto saxophone or tenor sax. I don't know. He was trying everything, and he could click with it really well. And I liked it, but I was slow. And I was really, at a very young age, I was learning to do a lot of musical things at once through my teachers. So I never became a very good guitarist, but in the process of trying to learn how to get around the guitar at 7, he was teaching me through very formal methods of learning notation, learning music theory, keys, scales, reading, and all of this stuff was happening at once. And my 10-year-old brother picked up on it right away. But for me, the comprehension was cool. The hand-to-eye coordination was a problem.
Okay.
Seeing the notes, having to look at the fretboard to put my fingers in the position, that's slow, And so my guitar teacher, I can blame him. He said, you need to pay more attention to the rhythm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you need to pay more attention to the rhythm and the timing. And by this time, my brother already had a garage band that they were really more of a basement band. They would practice in our basement, and he was playing bass and a couple of electric guitarists and a drummer who still works in town here that I'm friendly with, named Matt Barber, was playing drums in my brother's band. And I would watch them practice, and I would sit by Matt and I would watch him do the things he'd do, and I'd listen to the rhythm and the beat. And it wasn't really helping my guitar playing so much, but I understood what the message was, you know. But then I actually just got more interested in the drums. And so I think one day when they went upstairs to have some lemonade or shoot some basketball in the driveway or something like that, I sat down behind Matt's drums, and I literally kind of like turned into Hal Blaine for a second, because I was playing like do do ga ga do do ga da like some California surf rock beat or something like. And I was hooked, and I literally couldn't stop, because I'd watched him and I'd kind of worked it out in my lap, you know, and all this kind of stuff like that. And I sat down at the drums, and they all came running downstairs. They could hear it, you know, and they're like, what the hell's he doing, you know? And they're like, hey, that's pretty good, you know? And so then I was hooked. And then it was about a couple of years later, you know, my brother was already in the school band system. And so it came at 10 in fourth grade, I think you could start to be in the school band. And so I was still just practicing guitar, but my mom said, you know, do you want to, you know, you should sign up for something in the school band. What do you want to play? And I said, well, I want to play drums. And she said, okay. She understood. And on the day that I went to go sign up, the band director at the grade school, he said, well, we already have enough drummers, so why don't you play trumpet? And I was like, okay, you know. And I came home, and she said how to go getting signed up. And I said, well, they told me they had enough drummers and that I should play trumpet. And the next morning, my mom called the band director at the school, and she said, if my son wants to play drums, you put him in the drum section. And okay, Mrs. Stanoch, you know, thank you, Mom. Thank you very much. You know? And you know, and then I was able to actually start taking drum lessons at the same music school. It's a little private house in a nearby suburb here that where we were studying the guitar. They had a fellow who was he played what they called Dixieland drums, you know, ragtime type stuff, and he had good hands, and he got me into playing on a pad initially. And we were working out of these kind of classic Roy Burns reading books.
Yeah. Okay.
The blue one, the red one, you know, those books.
Yeah.
And that was cool for a minute, but in some ways I didn't quite click with this guy, but I was learning things. But I started getting interested in the idea of getting a different teacher, which, long story short, again led me to Elliot Fine. And so when I was 10, I started studying with Elliot, you know, who, along with Marv, was a principal percussionist in the Minnesota Orchestra. And of course, you know, those guys both had jazz backgrounds. They had grown up playing with a lot of artists, not only here in the city, but national artists and things like that. And so that was a good move. That was a good move, you know. Yeah. And then Elliot was immediately disarming. For a 10-year-old, I walked in for the first lesson, and he immediately started talking to me like an adult, joking around with me. He was saying things that were probably inappropriate for somebody my age, but I mean, like, he didn't, you know, he was just like, you could tell he was very relaxed. You could tell he was very good at what he did, and he was able to teach very well, and he was able to make it exciting. And I wanted to practice, you know, and I was, you know, and I was getting a lot of information from around me too, not just the radio, but the television, you know. I mean, I was living in the time where, you know, you could watch Buddy Rich on the Tonight Show and all these kinds of things, you know. And so that was the genesis of it, and that's what led me to the drums and how I got led to the drums. And once I started playing, I've never really wanted to stop, you know. And I think that there's just something, and this can go in a whole other direction, but I think that there's just something about drumming that connects me to the vibration of making music and experiencing what a transcendent and kind of healing experience that can be every time I play. You know, when I'm playing music, I mean, I'm working a lot of the time when I'm playing music, but I'm I just really feel like myself, and the drums are my voice. You know, I dabble in other things, and I've worked around being a total percussionist. You know, and it was with the term they use for when you play all the mallets and the timpani and the bells and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I was for all that. I toured. You know, I was over in England when I was 16. I toured Europe when I was 16 years old with a national symphony orchestra that was, you know, based out of here in the United States, and rehearsed in New Jersey and played in Carnegie Hall in New York and recorded an album. And then we went and spent the summer touring through Europe. And that was the experience I had that just made me very clear about the idea that that was the direction I wanted to go with my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but in those days I was playing, you know, I actually got selected to be the principal. And so I was playing timpani on the Dvorak Symphony when the other members of the orchestra were just kind of sitting there, which didn't even sit well with me. So in a lot of the different cities we went to, I just started passing the part around because everybody had to learn it for the audition. And I'm like, why should I be the only one to play it? You know, I was like, I got to play it in Carnegie Hall. I'm good. You know,
Yeah.
you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, we played some wild places. We played Fairfield Hall in Croydon. This is where we played in England, and we played in the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, or Saint Michel, you know, and
Wow.
and different places. Yeah, it was a fascinating experience, you know, to see the world and to play music, and to have that kind of reach, you know, and but my point was, I was telling my boys last night about how at one point in time, I think it was around the time I was just getting into college, somebody had passed away, and they had a couple timpani that the family wanted to get. It was an older percussionist, and they wanted to give them to me, which I thought was incredibly generous. But I ended up rejecting that offer because, like, I was like, I'm driving a Ford Fairmont. I'm transient, you know. I'm like in college. I wanted to move to LA, which I did after school. You know, I mean, like, I'd already had that in my head. I'm like, what am I going to do with these things? You know, it's like most anywhere I go, if there's timpani to play, they're there.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm in college you go to the orchestra hall or whatever, you know, and it's like, so what, you know, like what do I really want to do? You know, and I just realized I like playing nice grooves. I like improvising. And Paul, I've worked really hard on being a piano player. I did better with mallets, but it was still the hand-eye coordination. I have that trouble with the piano. I have that trouble with the guitar. So I just can't do with 10 fingers what I can do with 4 limbs. You know, and because for one thing, the damn targets are bigger, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, you know, and I can keep my eye on the music and the band, and I, you know, if I need to look at what I'm doing, I can, but it just works for me that way. So I never really questioned it. Some people say, why are you a drummer? And my answer is kind of like, I don't know. You know, I don't know. It felt right. Things got to a place where it just seemed like, okay, this is what I enjoy spending my time doing.
Yeah.
This makes me feel like myself. Not always the easiest thing in the world, but nothing's gonna be.
No.
You know. And my parents, you know, they worried about me going into music as a career because that part they couldn't really relate to. They had no experience with that. And I mean, I'm still coming up, you know, from the era where between the 60s into the 80s when I got into college, where, you know, I mean, you know, there was a lot of drug-fueled rock and roll and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And they were, you know, especially all the British bands I liked, you know, they were, they were the real partiers, Keith Moon, you know, and you know, heroes of mine like that. And Keith Moon was a hero of mine. I got to see him play.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I saw the Who by Numbers tour when I was I don't even know if I was quite 16 yet, but man, that was one of the, I can still get goosebumps thinking about that.
Wow.
It was amazing. I saw Bonham, you know, I saw those guys, man. I remember going to see one of the first concerts I ever saw, just now to riff on the British thing for a minute, was I saw what was called Wings Over America. It was Paul McCartney's first tour of the United States after the Beatles broke up. It was only 4 years after the Beatles broke up. And the only thing that I've ever heard in my life that was louder than the crowd when Paul McCartney took the stage was when I was working on a cruise ship in Port Canaveral, Florida, and I heard a rocket take off from NASA.
Oh, wow.
And that was the only thing I've heard in my life that was louder than the crowd greeting a Beatle. Yeah, so those are great
amazing.
memories.
It's
very formative stuff, it inspired me.
I mean, did you study music at college?
Yeah. I went to college specifically to study. Well, I intended to go to college to study music. That part is, in general, is just very true. But I decided to go to what was the University of Wisconsin in Madison, Wisconsin, because, well, my brother was going to school there at the end of his college days, right around the same time I was getting out of. He graduated college the same year I graduated high school. And living in Madison, I came to understand that the jazz department there had been taken over by one of the world's greatest bassists, Richard Davis, who I had on all different kinds of records I had growing up that were like, he was the bass player in the Thad Jones Mel Lewis Orchestra. He was a studio staff musician for CBS, so he was on albums like Astral Weeks by Van Morrison. He was on a couple Bruce Springsteen records playing upright, at 17 with Janet Ian. But then I also had, he did a lot of collaborating with Elvin Jones. They had groups together with McCoy Tyner, Pharoah Sanders, Tony Williams, Eric Dolphy, Out to Lunch, classic records like that. I had all these records Richard was playing bass on. And at that point in my life, one of the things that I clearly understood was my drumming was in a pretty good space for my age at 18 because of the training I had from Elliott, because of the passion I had. And, my senior year of high school, I performed with my high school jazz ensemble at our spring concert with Ed Shaughnessy as our guest artist.
Oh, yeah.
And Ed took a real interest in me. And I was introduced to Ed through Elliott, too, because Ed was working on The Tonight Show with Doc Severinsen. And Doc Severinsen actually had a job with a couple of symphony orchestras around the country as what they called their pops director, their pops conductor. And he was the pops conductor of the Minnesota Orchestra in the heyday of The Tonight Show. So like where Doc went, Ed went. And so they were working with like Marvin Elliott for years, So Elliott got me connected with Ed, and he was very, like he could see what I had accomplished at that young age and my potential. So I went to study with Richard because I figured what I need now is I need to get better at playing with better people in a rhythm section and get a better rhythm section concept together. And I thought, I've had a lot of great drum lessons. Why not go study with one of the world's greatest bass players?
That's interesting.
And see how that works out. And that worked out great.
Yeah.
That opened up a whole new chapter for me in my life that gave me greater strength and greater confidence. And of course, even just moving to Madison created a lot of great opportunity by circumstance or accident, you might say, because I mean, as soon as I get settled there, I find out, well, that's where Clyde Stubblefield lives. And, there was a guy who had a recording studio named Butch Vig, who I was doing session work for different people. And of course, Butch produced Nevermind for Nirvana, and Garbage is his band, and he's worked with the Pumpkins and everybody else like that, and has become iconic, and to the point of where he's working with Paul McCartney, and all that kind of stuff like that. And but before he was famous, I was working with him, and he was already that guy, and in a recording studio, that's a good experience. Being around Clyde Stubblefield, another game changer for me, that's a whole other story, but Richard Davis gave me a lot of things that I needed. And also just because I went there to study with Richard Davis, and also the percussion professor there at the school, Jim Latimer, who was also the conductor of the Wisconsin Youth Symphony Orchestra. So he was a very, expansive and powerful figure. Those were the people that brought in Max Roach for me to study with, artist in residency, Alan Dawson, Zakir Hussain. You know, I mean, it was like, so I just, by thinking to myself, oh, I should go study with Richard. Not only was that a great idea, because he started hiring me and recording with me and doing shows with me and giving me the opportunity to work on his level, rise up to that through being able to play with him. There were all these other people around that turned out to be powerful influences in my life that really helped shape who I am as a musician, you know?
Yeah. So if we take all of that into recent times, the Venn diagram that is your career now, let's say, teaching, publishing, do you work with the PAS, performing, recording? That I mean, that's something that I you know, the term that I kind of cling on to here is like that portfolio career. You know, is that a fair representation of where you're at, where you're having to kind of not balance plates, but like you've cultivated a career in music around the drums, but you are effectively doing like 2 or 3 things at least to make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, I'm spinning plates. Trust me, Paul. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what it is. But I'm fortunate that those are the plates I'm spinning.
Yeah.
And you know, you know, it takes a lot of work, right? So I'm proud of that. You know, there's a fair amount of luck involved, but you know, luck is when, you know, opportunity meets preparation. You know, and one of the things that I've really done, which was Vic's motto, was just persevere.
Yeah.
Persevere was Vic's mantra, you know.
Yeah.
And so nowadays it's all of that, you know. It's I love all of it, you know. First and foremost, the reason I do any of this at all is because I love to play. I love performing, and I'm blessed to be incredibly busy with my performance work right now, because I'm in a variety of projects, or you know, I work in playing situations with a variety of people that, you know, they're constantly revolving and overlapping, and they all keep me busy. And so I have a variety of musical situations that I perform in that is really exciting for me, and that I really, you know, enjoy, because I've always enjoyed variety in music. You know, I mean, I'm very at home working in the world of jazz music, what Miles Davis calls social music, and the ability to understand. And I worked on a lot of this with Richard. The ability to understand song form, the ability to phrase, you know, and improvise, and you know, and I mean, of course, Elliot helped me with a lot of that. Alan Dawson and Max helped me with a lot of that, and some of my other teachers too that I've been blessed to study with, like when I was in Los Angeles studying with people like Ackerman when he was in Frank Zappa's band, Jeff Hamilton when he was working with Ray Brown. I mean, you know, he goes beyond. But the idea that I think that the roots, you know, because the drum set is rooted in jazz, I don't think you have to be a jazz player to be a good drum set player in this day and age. But I think that if you understand how the way coordinating that instrument was put together by those people, and how it shaped the way any other style of music is played on the instrument, I think it really gives you an advantage. And I teach that, you know, and then, you know, it's important to be very clear about how to, and this is through listening and working with a variety of other musicians, is just to understand, you know, in any style of music, there's the way people play it in different eras. And I think the more you understand that, the more versatile you are. And then when you're doing that across the board in different styles of music, not only does it give you the opportunity to maybe work in a tradition and meet a certain person who wants a certain musical vision, a certain kind of way that comes from that, and be able to represent it accurately, but it also gives you the opportunity to think outside the box, which people want to do too. You can mix and match these kind of things. But, I mean, like there are people that would hear me play with one kind of group and one style of music and would never dream or imagine that I might be able to do something on a high level in a different other kind of style of music. And I'm okay with that, because it's like, that means that, because the music touches my soul, I can create and execute in what I would call a convincing and believable way, like a good actor takes on a part.
Yeah.
You go see, I don't know, Morgan Freeman, Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep, people like this in the movies. If they're really doing their job well, which they typically do, they come on the screen and they're like, okay, there they are, they're playing this character, and 10 minutes later, you're not thinking about the actor, you're thinking about the character, And so I'm playing music, it's like, I want it to feel good. I want it to, Purdy especially, would always emphasize the idea of not playing for yourself, but playing to make sure everybody you're playing with is comfortable and that they can rely on you for that. And he said, and if you gain people's trust doing that, then they'll let you do your thing. But if you gain that trust first, you're going to come out ahead. And that's how I approach the music that I play. So anyway, performance is the love. And then, so being able to share that through teaching is the next part of it that, obviously helps me make a living in addition to performance. And then the vehicles that I have to also present my approaches through the books and the education and stuff like that, through the publishing, through the work that I've done with the PAS when I was, presenting or drum set editor for their magazine, which I was for a while. It's all just ways to help get the message out, And and I mean, the thing that I really love that I do the least is practice. And that's not to say that I don't practice. I'm assimilating new music for projects daily, because I'm running from one thing to the next, and I always have to make sure I'm prepared. So I'm behind the drums working out material, and if I need to work out some ideas to make the material more solid, I'm doing that on a daily basis. But that idea of sitting around and going back and trying to really refine some things that could probably use some brushing up, the idea of being able to take one idea and really expand it creatively, I do that a lot in my lessons with my students. But to put all that aside and be able to do it for myself, that's the one thing that I miss. That's the one thing that I really have time for. But I have to remind myself that the reason that I maybe don't have as much time for that is because I did so much of that I now have a career.
Yeah. And it shifts then, doesn't it? The emphasis shifts from preparing yourself, and like you say, it's not you're in a professional mindset. You've got a living to earn, and then you've got the balancing act between being project based. What's next? So it's that constant cycle of and that takes a lot of energy, and you've I think some of the young people that I work with, and I this might sound like a generalization, but it's just based on observation, really, is the resilience and perseverance that you speak of. Naturally, they haven't experienced that because they've not been on the planet long enough.
Right.
But it's perspective. They don't know that. They can't comprehend that.
No. One of the things that I used to regularly tell the new students that would arrive at McNally every semester was, why should you listen to me? Well, because I've been fired many more times than you have.
Yeah. But but there again is that resilience is so important.
Yeah.
And it's important to a creative who is naturally emotive, right? You know, they go with their heart more than their head.
Yeah, that's right. You know, and I mean, you have to, you know, this is a craft, and you're, you know, I mean, it's not like, you know, I mean, if I was a painter, I'd have to learn the rudiments of painting, and maybe I'd only have to create something that satisfies myself. But like, my instrument isn't about that. You know, our instrument is an accompaniment instrument primarily. Yes, we could be soloists, and there are great ones that can stand alone and hold an audience just doing that, like Max Roach first started doing. But the thing is, you have to work with other people, and you have to make other people happy. And so you're gonna hear pretty clearly, pretty quickly from a lot of other people if they're not happy with what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I had that conversation with myself once when I was living in LA, and I had that little conversation with myself where it's like, you know, you talk about wanting to belong to the club, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, do I really have what it takes to do this? You know, I've had that conversation with myself. And the answer that I came up with on that day was, I'm really not sure, but I love it so much that I still don't want to do anything else. So I'm just going to have to work harder.
That's it. Yeah.
You know, and that's it. You know, Richard Davis, when I moved to LA, I mean, here's a guy that had done all this different kind of studio work and, you know, whatnot. So he gave me the number of a couple contractors that he knew in Los Angeles. He said, call him up, tell him I recommended you call, and, you know, maybe you can get some work out of him. And there was one guy, I don't remember his name anymore, but like, I'd call his office and his secretary would answer, and, you know, it's like, Clark in, and no, can I take a message, you know, and yeah, I'm just calling to introduce myself. I'm new, working in town. Richard Davis gave me Clark's number. Okay, I'll have him call you. The guy would never call me. And then they you know, you learn this etiquette. Well, it's like, don't call every day, call every maybe once a week or every couple of weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
So I get in this habit of like calling him like every couple of weeks for maybe a couple of months, you know, and finally one day I call and I'm like, is so and so there, Clark, I think was his name. And she said, no, and she's, well, just a minute. And I'm on hold. And next thing I know, it's like, click, yeah, this is Clark. Who's this? You know, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
well, hi, I'm Stanoch, and I'm a drummer from Minnesota, just moved to LA, and I'm just looking for work. And, you know, I've got experience with this and that. And I've been working with Richard Davis, who strongly recommended that I give you a call. He said you're a drummer? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, he says, I use Harvey Mason, Steve Schaefer, and Vinnie Colaiuta for my sessions. He says, are you better than them? And I said, well, probably not. And he said, well, okay. He said, look, kid. He said, you'll you know, just work on your thing. You'll be fine. Tell Richard I said hi. Click. I mean, and so there it is, you know. And you know, you start to think about it like in that direction of the business. It's like contractors, people who hire people for whatever, dates, shows, you know, like I worked with a contractor here for many years for a lot of the show work that I would do, backing up major artists that would come to play with the orchestra or by themselves at, you know, concerts, casinos, those types of things. You get to know somebody like that. You get to be friends with them. As time goes by, maybe you end up being godfather to their children. You know, you play golf together. It's like, you got to be swinging a pretty mighty club to think you're going to walk in at the door and just like replace somebody or fall into the pecking order of people who have been at it like that for a long time. But, you know, I was reminded by something that I actually heard Steve Gadd and Ralph McDonald talking about at a Zildjian Day in Chicago clinic that I saw while I was in Chicago, because Chicago's close to Madison, Wisconsin. We went down for this big event. And Ralph in particular, he was saying things like, and for people that don't know, Ralph was certainly well known for his career as the first call studio percussionist in New York for many years, but he was also a composer, and he was probably quite a millionaire because he had a couple different compositions that were on the Saturday Night, the John Travolta movie during the disco era, the Saturday Night Fever, which at one point was the best-selling record of all time. Yeah. You know what I mean? Up there with like Thriller and Rumors and Dark Side of the Moon, and so Ralph had some composing credits on that record. So Ralph had some money, right? And he's talking and he's telling people, like people come up to me, they're like, Ralph, man, get me into the studios, man. I'm ready. And Ralph's like, you might as well think you could just walk into the CEO's office at GM and say, okay, I'm here to replace you. He says, he says, that's not going to happen. He says, but if you have your people and you have your network in your own time, you will create your own world, which is what we did. And that'll be the thing. And he was right about that. And in Los Angeles, just to kind of to wrap that up, a lot of my friends that I was making music with in college in Madison all moved out to Los Angeles about the same time. And sure enough, one guy meets some new people, some other people, somebody needs a drummer, somebody needs a guitarist. We started recommending each other for work. Yeah, lifting each other up, and then the next thing you know, it's like we've got gigs. Yeah. So anyway,
yeah. No, that's fantastic. I mean, I think we could go for hours. I mean, I think that's a great place to push pause, and the reason I say that is because I would love to do this again sometime.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure to be here. And and I really appreciate you asking and your interest. I mean, we're friends, so of course it's just great to get together and hang. Yeah, but it's a nice, I'm so focused on the doing that I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the why and the how anymore.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And so if anything else, it's like if you have a passion for something, if you have a belief in something, don't let anybody stop you. Go for it. It's like the world is such a bizarre and volatile place these days, and it's like, I mean, it's going to take people with imagination, heart, and positive energy to try to help move things forward, in a positive way versus a negative way, right? I mean, so if I can, if our conversation, if our dialogue inspires anybody to stay on that path like you are and like I try to be, it's like, so much the better, and I'm here for people who are wanting to help find themselves on that journey. That's part of what I do with my teaching and my playing and because it's a shared thing. It's a community thing, I can't do what I do without other people. And there's a lot of people that have helped me along the way. And, when I was playing with Ed Shaughnessy that night at the high school and we were getting a standing ovation after performing together, he put his arm around me, and he said, okay, kid, he says, you've got what it takes. He says, now you got to remember to give it back. He said, buddy did that for me. He said, you got to go out and do that for other people now. He said, that was what Ed was telling me. That was Ed's, thing. Like, okay, you've got what it takes. Run with it and give it back to other people. And I'm about that. I enjoy doing that.
No, and you've always been really kind to me, man. I mean, you just have.
And that's how we developed our friendship.
How could I not be kind to you?
Well, I mean, there is that, of course, but...
That's right.
Yeah. No, but
people don't treat people the way you want to be treated. That's how it is, Yeah. We all do better when we get along, man. you know.
That's right, man.
And
I mean,
and I know what it's like to not be treated well as a drummer. you know, and in other areas of life, you have to learn how to deal with adversity. So then it's like, I don't have trouble standing up for myself. You know, if things are in a situation where it's like, I don't feel like I'm being treated fairly, that's another conversation, right? But in general in life, it's like, I'm just trying, and that's something else that I like talk to my own children about. You know, don't let people take advantage of you. It's just because I'm nice, I'm not necessarily always a pushover or anything like that. You know, it's just, but I just I like to see people win. You know, I like to see good things happen for all of us. You know.
There it is. There it is. So listen, David, I'm going to put all of your links in the show notes so people can follow you on various things or reach out to you. And one thing I'm learning from all of my friends that I'm speaking to on these podcasts is resilience, perseverance. You know, I think there must be something in us as drummers that we know we can't do this on our own. Right. So I find that like drummers just love drums and drummers. You know, we love hanging out with each other, learning from each other in many ways.
We're the best support group in the world.
yeah, quite. Yeah. A friendship group, not therapy. You know, it's that. You know.
Well, it can
be both. It can be both.
That's right. I mean, like seriously, haven't you ever had experiences where like you can't quite figure out what's going on with somebody or something, so you call somebody with more experience at what you do, and they're like, okay, here's what you need to know. You know, it's like, and they'll offer that. You know, I've got a friend in town. I know we're wrapping it up. I've got a friend in town I've known for years, Joe Police. He's the drummer who beat me in the tri-state competition of the Louis Belson Slingerland National Drum Contest. After I won the Minnesota competition, Joe won Wisconsin. We had a face-off with another drummer from Iowa for the finals, and Joe, I forgot I was in a contest watching Joe play at age 16, you know, and he was amazing. And so he's somebody that continues to play, and he was all plugged into the circuit with the contractors and the shows when I first moved back in town. And he's the one who called me up, and he's like, you want to get into some of this? He's like, I got more of this work than I can handle, and they could use you. And I'm like, yeah. And then things would happen, like I'd get called to work with a certain artist, and he'd call me and he'd say, have you worked with so-and-so before? You know, these are like famous people. And I'm like, no. And he goes, okay, make sure you can see the piano player at all times, because so-and-so, their sense of time is really out there, and the piano player goes with them every time. So even if you have to put your music stand where you would normally put your ride cymbal so you can see the piano player, put it there, and then you'll be fine. You know, and he was right. You know, I mean, like things like that. You can't buy that. That's just
That's wonderful, isn't it? Wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, David, no, bless you. It's been a pleasure. I mean, I've not seen you for a couple of years. It is too long. I'm definitely at the NAMM Show in January if you are attending.
I've been talking to the boys about that, and right now we are planning to go. So schedules being what they are, I hope that works out, because we all really want to go. It's been, I mean, I think the last time I was there was the last time I saw you.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're due.
We are overdue. Yeah, I've got a lovely photo of you with my boys at the NAMM Show, actually.
Yeah, good.
2020, just before everything locked down.
Yeah. I remember meeting them.
Yeah. So I would love to meet your boys if they're traveling out there with you.
Yeah, they both want to go. I had them there. Actually, I was there one time since, and they were there. That was right after everything started to open up again. Mm-hmm. And this year they said this year they've told me they want to go in January. So we're going to try to make it out there.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to that, but let's do this again sometime, because I think we just got started, really.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. I would love to, and thank you again for inviting me, Paul. It's just great to see you, my friend, and thanks for your interest. I just really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure. Have a great day, and thanks for giving me the time. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks very much. All right.
All right.
See you.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.